Have you ever felt that someone was meant for you, even if they are far away? That despite distance, time, and obstacles, an invisible bond continues to vibrate between you. Today, I will show you why separation is never the end. Why what Allah has united in hearts, no distance can break. Stay with me until the end, because what you are about to discover could transform the way you view your relationships, your hopes, and even your own faith. You're here, alone, with this weight squeezing your heart, this emptiness that no one really understands. You look around you, you live your life, you may smile, but inside, there's a question that won't leave you. Why? Why this distance? Why this separation? Why this silence between us? And sometimes, you don't even need to ask the question out loud, because the pain itself speaks. It wakes you at night. It accompanies you when you're lost in your thoughts. It invites itself into your prayers. You try to stifle it. You try to convince yourself that you've moved on, that you've accepted. But deep down, your soul knows. It knows there's something greater than this simple human distance. You may believe that distance is a wall, that it severs ties, that it puts an end to what you felt. But what you don't see is that behind this distance, there is an invisible wisdom. A wisdom that goes beyond your limited vision. Think about this. Who created hearts? Who shaped their beats, their inclinations, their attachments? Who made it possible that one day, your path would cross that of another person, among billions of souls on this earth? Do you really believe that this encounter, this connection, was accidental? Number. Nothing is accidental when it comes to your heart. And it's in silence that you understand the most. Because when everything stops, when the messages cease, when the glances disappear, there remains something you cannot stifle. The trace of a connection. A connection that no one around you truly understands. You may be told, forget it. Move on. It's over. But you know it's not that simple. You know that despite your efforts, despite logic, despite reason, there is still this invisible presence in your heart. And you wonder, am I the one who is too weak? Am I the one who can't let go? But what if this feeling isn't a weakness? What if it's a reminder? Sometimes Allah places distance to awaken what you would never have discovered otherwise. Because when a person is there, close, accessible, you may take that connection for granted. But when they move away, your soul discovers the depth of what they felt. And it's not just a human connection, it's a sign. A sign that some souls recognize each other beyond physical proximity. A sign that distance is not a rupture, but a test. A test to see if you understand that what is united by Allah, no kilometers, no barriers, no circumstances can truly separate. Imagine an immense sea. The waves seem to push the boats apart, scattering them randomly. But beneath the surface, invisible currents continue to steer them, bring them together, guide them toward a common destination. This is how your bond lives on. On the surface, everything seems scattered, broken, distant. But inside, in the invisible, there is a current that continues to connect you to this person. And you feel it, you know it, because your heart refuses to forget. Not out of weakness, but because you're not the one who decides to erase it. You've tried to move on, haven't you? You've tried to fill that void with other things, other people, other distractions. But nothing takes its place. Because it's not a simple memory. It's not an ordinary attachment. It's a bond woven by the one who created your emotions. The one who writes your destiny. The one who brings you together and separates you at the perfect moment. So when you feel this emptiness, understand well. It's not abandonment. It's not the end. It's a reminder. A reminder that what truly belongs to you cannot be taken away. That what is written for you will find you, even if the whole earth stands as a barrier. That this distance you mourn today is perhaps the path Allah has chosen to protect this bond, to purify it, to prepare it to return in a form you can't yet imagine. And you, in this silence, have two choices. Either you let the emptiness destroy you, or you understand that this emptiness is actually a space that Allah fills with signs. Each star becomes proof that you are not made for indifference. Each memory becomes a light that tells you what is meant to stay will stay. What is distant is never truly gone. And that's when you realize that sometimes Allah keeps closest to you what seems furthest away. Imagine two souls. At first, they don't know each other. They're somewhere on this vast earth, separated by borders, by languages, by completely different life stories. They move forward, each on their own with their secret pains, their prayers whispered in the night, their wounds that no one can guess. And then, one day, their paths cross. Perhaps in a seemingly ordinary encounter. A word, a look, a smile. It's nothing. And yet, at that moment, something settles in the heart. A strange, sweet, inexplicable sensation. As if it weren't a first encounter. As if it were a reminder. As if the soul had just recognized something it had always known. From then on, things change. Even without meaning to, you think of this person. You notice their presence in the smallest details. A shared silence, a way of walking, a burst of laughter. And the more time passes, the more you understand that this isn't just another encounter. It's an encounter that leaves a lasting impression. It's an encounter that lasts. But life is never simple. Circumstances, responsibilities, and unforeseen events get in the way. Sometimes they're personal choices. Sometimes they're imposed trials. Then the two souls drift apart. Not always by choice, but by necessity. And that's when the distance begins. At first, you think you'll get used to it. You think the absence will erase the feelings. You cling to the idea that time heals. But days pass, months pass, and you realize it's not so simple. Because without understanding how, that person continues to live in your mind. Every decision, every step you take, that memory returns. Not to torment you, but to remind you that some connections don't depend on you. They're bigger than you. They're beyond your control. You try to convince yourself it's over. You try to tell yourself you have to move on. And yet, in a random smile, in a scent on the street, in a sentence, someone says, there's this reminder. As if life itself refuses to cut that thread. And then you start to ask yourself questions. Why does this person remain in my thoughts when I no longer have any logical reason to cling to them? Why does this connection survive when distance should have erased everything? Why is it that, despite the barriers, I still feel this presence in my life? What if it wasn't you? What if it wasn't your will nor your weakness, but a sign? A divine reminder that some souls were woven together before your eyes even saw this world? Imagine two stars in the sky. They seem distant, separate, as if they had nothing in common. But if you could see the invisible, you would discover that their trajectories, their lights, their vibrations, They respond to each other in perfect harmony. It's the same for souls. What you see is the separation, but what you don't see is the hidden thread that continues to unite them. And you walk. You continue your life, you laugh, you pray, you fall, you get up again. From the outside, everything seems normal. But inside, there is still that invisible thread that connects your heart to theirs. It is silent, but powerful. It is fragile in your eyes, but unbreakable in spiritual reality. It is discreet, but it lives. Like a rope stretched by the one who sees what no one sees. So, you believe that this person is far away. You believe your lives are separate. You believe that distance has broken something. But in truth, nothing is broken. For every thought that arises without warning is a reminder. Every memory that returns when you least expect it is a sign. Every involuntary smile when thinking of that person is a thread that neither time, nor mistakes, nor miles can sever. And if you really pay attention, you will see that even when you try to turn the page, something always reopens it. Not to make you suffer, but to show you that Allah keeps alive what He has united. Even when you think it's all over. And perhaps what you are experiencing right now is not a definitive separation, but a preparation. Perhaps this distance is not a rejection, but a path. Perhaps what you see as silence is actually divine writing, a story that has not yet revealed its next chapter. So, don't be fooled by what your eyes see, because what your eyes call the end, your heart knows is only a pause. Your heart still beats for that person, even when they are far away, even when the silence crushes you, even when everything around you says it's over. It still beats. You've tried to extinguish it, haven't you? You've tried to cover that beat with layers of distractions, new habits, reassuring words. You even thought for a moment that you'd succeeded. But all it takes is one detail, a smell, a song, a random phrase, and your heart starts beating again as if nothing has changed, as if time has erased nothing. Why? Because your heart doesn't obey your plans. It doesn't follow your rational decisions. It is in the hands of the one who created it, the one who turns it inside out, the one who attaches it to what he wants, when he wants. Every memory becomes a light, not just an image in your head, but a flame that warms your soul just when you think it's freezing. You close your eyes, and it's not just a face you see. It's a presence. It's an echo. As if, despite the distance, a part of that person continues to live inside you. And sometimes, it hurts. You wonder, why do I still feel this way? Why can't I move on like everyone else? But what if this pain were actually a sign of life? Because only what lives can hurt. What is dead, what is extinguished, is no longer felt. But you still feel. And this feeling is not in vain. Imagine your heart as a lamp. The distance, the trials, the silences. All of this acts like a violent wind trying to extinguish the flame. And you think the lamp will go out, but each time the flame resists. It flickers. It trembles. But it remains there. Why? Because you don't feed it. It's a light nourished by an invisible source, an energy you cannot cut off. You think you've lost. But what you think is lost is actually protected. Protected in ways you don't yet understand. Protected by a wisdom beyond your limited vision. Your attachment is not weakness. Your hope is not an illusion. Your faith in this bond is not naivety. All of this is a sign that this heart is not empty. It is a sign that this bond, even stretched by distance, is not broken. Because what comes from Allah does not fade away simply under the pressure of time or circumstances. Think of a seed buried under the ground. You don't see it. You might think it's dead, but in reality, it's preparing to give birth. This is your connection. To you, it's buried, invisible, silent. But in the invisible world, it continues to nourish itself, to strengthen itself, to prepare itself. And when you pray, you feel it even more. You sense this strange duality. On the one hand, you ask Allah to help you move forward, to free your heart, to heal your wounds. But on the other, you know that this persistent beating is itself a response. As if Allah were saying to you, do not confuse pain with abandonment. Do not confuse waiting with loss. Do not confuse distance with rupture. Your heart is still attached, and this is no accident. For if Allah wanted this connection to die, He would have already erased it. But it is still there, alive, burning, persistent. Every beating you feel is like a divine reminder. A reminder that souls do not entirely belong to themselves, that they are led, connected, guided by an invisible wisdom. A reminder that some connections are so deep that no physical distance can silence them. So yes, sometimes you feel this loss like an open wound. But sometimes, you also feel this memory like a soothing balm. The two coexist. And this mixture of bitterness and sweetness is proof that this bond is still alive. What if this persistence wasn't a mistake? What if this beating was actually a sign that something is still written? What if the very fact that you still feel this flame, despite everything, was a message you're not supposed to ignore? Because if Allah had wanted to take this person away from you, totally, absolutely, He would have torn the bond from the depths of your soul. But it remains. It resists. It survives. And you continue to move forward with that heart that still beats. You continue to carry that flame that no one sees, but that you feel in every fiber of your being. And that fire, however silent it may be, is living proof that this bond is not over. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a thread. Not a thread your hands can touch, nor one your eyes can see, but a golden thread, almost invisible, stretched between your heart and theirs. It crosses space. It crosses time. It crosses mountains, oceans, borders. Nothing can stop it. Even when you think it's lost, it's still there, vibrating invisibly. This thread is not like any other. It's not a human connection you can sever with a decision, anger, or forgetfulness. It's a thread the Creator wove Himself, made of a material nothing in the world can tear. Every time you think of this person, the thread lights up. Every prayer you say silently, even a prayer you think is weak, strengthens this thread. Every involuntary smile, every memory that arises without warning, adds a new vibration. And you, sometimes, believe it's just an illusion. You think it's your mind clinging to something from the past. But if you could see this thread, if Allah opened your eyes to the invisible, you would see a shattering truth. It's there. Always. Unbreakable. Think of the most violent winds. They shake, they tear, they destroy. But this thread, despite the storms of life, remains taut. It may tremble, it may seem fragile, but it never breaks. Because it is not of this world. It belongs to the world of souls. And this thread, sometimes, You feel it without understanding it. It's that moment when you suddenly think of this person for no apparent reason. It's that dream that arises when you had tried to forget. It's that strange feeling that he or she is thinking of you at that very moment. You tell yourself it's chance mud, but it's not chance. It's the invisible thread that vibrates, that transmits, that reminds you that some connections transcend human logic. Now imagine this thread as a rope stretched across an abyss. If you look only with your eyes, you think everything is over. The person is far away. The story is broken. The path is interrupted. But if you look with your soul, you see that the thread is still taut, strong, luminous. And this thread is enough. Because as long as it exists, nothing is lost. This connection is like a silent pulse. You don't hear it, but it beats. You don't see it, but it lives. And it continues to beat even when you think everything is dead. Sometimes, this thread weighs you down, because you wish it would disappear so that your pain would go away. But if it still exists, it's not to destroy you. It's to remind you that your story is not over. That even in absence, there is a presence. That even in silence, there is a voice that continues to speak to you. And this voice doesn't come from you. It comes from the one who decided that your souls must recognize each other, seek each other, wait for each other. Imagine this thread as a golden light in the night. You walk in the darkness, you think you're lost. But every time you look deep into your heart, you see this glow. It guides you. It says to you, keep going. Don't think it's over. Don't think you're alone. And even if the person is far away, you keep walking. Because this light reminds you that what is united by Allah remains united in a dimension that nothing can reach. This invisible thread is a test and a comfort at the same time. A test because you must learn to be patient, to endure the loss, to remain faithful despite the distance. A comfort because you know, deep down, that this connection wasn't given to you for nothing, that it wasn't the result of chance, that it wasn't a mistake of your heart. And perhaps one day, this thread will bring you back to that person, in a way you don't expect. Perhaps it will reunite you at the perfect moment, in a form more beautiful than you imagined. But even if that day hasn't yet arrived, the thread already tells you one truth: you have never lost. Because a thread woven by Allah cannot be cut. It may stretch, it may disappear from your sight, it may seem silent, but it lives on. It lives on through your prayers. It lives on through your memories. It lives on through those moments when your heart still beats for that person. And as long as this thread exists, nothing is truly finished. Maybe this is just the beginning. You ask yourself questions. You may not dare to say them out loud, but they live within you. They haunt you. They circle in your mind. Why this distance? Why now? Why me? These questions gnaw at you. They hurt because you seek immediate answers. You do yearn for a clear explanation, a logic that soothes your heart. But what you don't know is that maybe you're asking the wrong questions. What if the real question isn't why, but how? How can you transform this distance into a bridge rather than a wall? How can you keep your heart pure even in the midst of absence and silence? How can you remain patient when everything within you burns with impatience? Because yes, it's easy to ask why. But the why belongs to Allah, and His knowledge is beyond your gaze. What He asks of you is not to understand everything, but to learn to walk in the darkness with trust. So ask yourself, How can you nourish this invisible bond, even if it appears dormant? Perhaps by making your love a prayer. Perhaps by transforming your expectation into trust. Perhaps by learning to love through Allah, not through your ego. Because if this bond is real, it does not depend on your control. It is not dependent on your despair. It is guarded, protected by the one who loses nothing. And you, do you think you have lost? Answer me sincerely. Is it you who makes your heart beat? Is it you who decides every breath, every beat, every emotion? Number. So why do you believe you control the destiny of this bond? You are the guardian of your intention, not the master of divine writing. Listen again to these questions that strike your soul. How can you accept distance as a school for your heart, instead of seeing it as a punishment? How can you remain steadfast in your expectation, without letting your hope crumble? How can you transform this lack into energy to draw you closer to Allah, rather than a poison that distances you from Him? You see, every how elevates you. Every how forces you to search within yourself for a strength you never thought you possessed. The why traps you in pain, but the how opens you to wisdom. Perhaps you believe this connection has been broken. But let me ask you, has distance really destroyed what you feel? Number. So understand this. Distance is not an end, it is a trial. And a trial is not overcome with whys, but with hows. How do I remain faithful? How do I remain patient? How do I transform my love into a path to Allah rather than a chain that imprisons me? And then ask yourself again, how can you guard your heart without weighing it down with resentment? How can you love without possessing? How can you wait without despairing? Perhaps you think it's impossible. But look closely at your history. How many times have you thought you wouldn't last? And yet you're still here, alive, with that bond still beating in your heart. You're stronger than you think, because Allah never writes a trial without the strength that goes with it. So the real question is no longer, why is this person far from me? But rather, how can I draw closer to the one who holds both our souls in his hands? And if you change your question, everything changes. Pain becomes a school. Absence becomes a reminder. Waiting becomes an act of faith. But listen carefully, because I'm going to ask you the most important question. What if Allah had kept this connection alive in your heart, not so that you would idolize Him, but so that you would understand that it's not the other person you're really seeking, but Him? What if this invisible thread were actually a rope pulling you towards Him, forcing you to call out to Him, to invoke Him, to confide in Him what you can't say to anyone else? You think you're waiting for that person, but in reality, you're waiting for the perfect moment. You think you're attached to this connection, but in reality, you're attached to the promise that what is written for you can never escape. And that's why the real question isn't why, but how. Sometimes life makes you feel like everything is slipping away. It takes away what you thought you held in your hands. It pushes away from you what you thought you had acquired. It leaves you with this emptiness, this feeling that your world is collapsing. You look ahead and you see nothing but absence. But have you ever noticed that even in this emptiness, something still speaks to your soul? It's not a voice you hear with your ears. It's a silent voice, an inner presence. It's like a subtle whisper reminding you, nothing is lost. Nothing is beyond my sight. What you consider distant isn't really far away. What you believe to be lost is actually guarded, preserved, protected in a dimension your eyes cannot see. What you desire, what your heart calls out in its most secret prayers, is not ignored. It is simply held back, prepared, refined, to arrive at the perfect moment, in a form your limited mind cannot yet imagine. And if you take the time to feel, you will discover a shattering truth. Every separation is a reminder that you were never in control, a reminder that souls do not unite by their own strength, but because Allah brings them together, a reminder that what you believe to be broken is actually being rewritten by a hand wiser than yours. Imagine a vast book. You hold only one page between your fingers. You see a scene, a word, a pain, an absence, and you believe that this is the end of the story. But if only you could see the rest of the book, you would know that this chapter was only a preparation, a necessary passage to reach a higher destination. This is the silent reminder. The distance you experience today is not a rejection. The emptiness you feel is not abandonment. The pain you carry is not punishment. All of this is a reminder that nothing happens by chance, that every thread of your story is woven with perfect precision. Sometimes you walk through this life with the feeling that your prayers are lost in the sky. You speak to Allah in your tears, in your silence, in your sleeplessness, and you think no one hears, but He hears, always. And what you take for silence on His part is not forgetfulness. It is a subtle reminder. I manage for you what you cannot manage on your own. You want this connection to be immediate, accessible, clear. But He wants it to be pure, solid, indestructible. So He creates distance, not to break you, but to strengthen you. Not to tear you away, but to prepare. This connection you feel, which no one sees, is a silent testimony. A testimony that your heart didn't invent this. A testimony that some connections belong to the world of souls even before they belong to the world of bodies. A testimony that what Allah chooses to unite, no obstacle can separate. Even if you are thousands of kilometers away, even if years pass, even if you think it's all over. And perhaps this silent reminder is there precisely so that you change your perspective. So that you understand that this bond is not just a human attachment, but a divine sign. A sign that your life is not a series of accidents. A sign that your heart does not beat in vain. Yes, you suffer. Yes, you feel the loss. But this loss is proof that your soul is alive. That your heart is still capable of loving, of remembering, of hoping. And if Allah has left this capacity in you, it is because He has a reason. So instead of saying, why me? Why this absence? Why this silence? Listen to the reminder. It tells you, nothing has left you without my choosing. It tells you, nothing moves away except to be replaced at the right moment. It tells you, nothing that truly belongs to you can escape you. The silent reminder is the certainty that what you believe to be broken is actually just waiting to be restored. It is the certainty that what you believe to be distant is actually kept closer to you than you imagine. It is the certainty that your heart still beats for a reason, and that this beating is not a mistake. So close your eyes once again. Feel your heart. Feel that beating. It is the proof that this bond still lives. Proof that what Allah has united cannot be broken by distance, silence, or time. And this reminder, it didn't come to you by chance. If this message has touched your heart, remember that some connections are protected by divine wisdom that we don't always understand. Remember, distance does not define destiny. Nurture your connection with patience, hope, and faith. Share this video with someone who needs this reminder today, and subscribe to discover other messages that illuminate your spiritual path.